Everybody. Welcome. Sorry, we're starting just a tad bit late here. We're at just 1 minute past noon Eastern time. But thanks, folks, for joining. Where do we have people joining us from today? I can see some of the participants, but if you guys want to just shout it out in the chat. If not, that's okay too. It's not a big deal. In the interest of time and while people are piling through, it looks like we're getting a decent chunk of participants. So thank you for joining and taking the time out of your day today. Some of you might be on your lunch, some of you might not be, some of you might be starting your day. Thanks for joining. I just wanted to introduce myself. If we haven't met already, my name is Jamie. I lead our customer success function here at Digitail. This is our second masterclass, so thank you for joining. Today we are going to be focused on understanding purchase order receiving and how it impacts inventory on inventory reporting. Heather will be our subject matter expert. As always, we do have some folks, myself and Alex, here to help with some of the Q&A. Just a bit of housekeeping. Please keep the questions in the Q&A box as much as possible. We will answer questions as they come in. We will do 30 minutes of content. We'll go through everything that we feel would be valuable for all of you to learn. And then after that, we'll save some time for Q&A. We'll do 15 minutes of Q&A. So 30 minutes of content, 15 minutes of Q&A. And we'll get to every single question as best we can. We understand that some of them are more practical and one-off use cases. So if those are the situations that come up, we'll follow up via email and try our best to triage and work with you directly from the technical support side. But yeah, without further ado, I will throw it over to you, Heather.
Okay, thanks. Let's go ahead and share the screen this time. All right. Give me 1 second. Okay, so it looks like we're good on sharing the screen this time. Just gonna start a timer just so I'm respectful of time here. Okay, so hey guys, welcome again. Thanks if this is your second time joining. I'm happy to see you here again. I wanted to say today we're going to do understanding purchase order receiving and impacts on inventory reporting. I do really appreciate everyone that has joined again. If this is your first time joining or your second time joining, originally I also wanted to cover some stock adjustments and batch tracking, but I'm realizing that I was a bit optimistic with that. So just so you have a heads up, we'll focus on stock adjustments and batch tracking with some inventory reporting in the next session, just so we can focus on purchase order receiving and some examples from there. I think it was a little bit too much content I was trying to put together. So I really appreciate the patience that you guys have with me as I'm figuring out how to lay out these topics. So before we get started, just a gentle reminder, if you weren't in the last webinar call, I'm your product expert. My name is Heather, and I've been in the industry for 16 years, 8 of those in implementing cloud-based software and the other 8 in practice. So I definitely understand what you go through on a regular basis. If you want more information, I did talk a little bit more about myself in the last call. So we'll just skip through today because we have a lot to talk about. And as Jamie mentioned, it's going to be a 30-minute call. And at the end of the session, we'll hold 15 minutes for Q&A. So please put your chats or questions into the QA section. Um, Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to another family pet just to kind of break the ice here. Happy 10th birthday to Ava. I definitely hackled at this image because she does not look happy about that birthday hat. So again, I just wanted to kind of break the ice here because we're going to talk a lot about today, and we do work in the industry, so I felt like this is a good touch. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And in today's agenda, we're going to do a quick formula overview. This is a recap of what we talked about in the previous masterclass. We definitely talked a lot about supplier unit to subunit ratio setup and how it impacts COGS accuracy. I felt like a lot of those examples that we discussed in the previous webinar does intertwine with some of the examples that we have today. But the main focus is going to be on purchase order receiving. We're going to talk about those purchase order details and how supplier discounts, taxes, and formulas impact your cost and reporting. So I did add some examples based just on some of the changes that we apply in the purchase order. But before we get started, let's talk about the few takeaways from our last session again, because I do feel like they kind of go together when it comes to purchase ordering. So we talked about how supplier unit and subunit, it does help with most precise cost tracking. So I'll show you an example here in just a moment. So, and this is specifically for especially CDMV users. You are required to set it up in this fashion, but the perk of this is that your reporting will be and can be very accurate. While Vet Cove users or users that are not using any type of supplier integration, they do have more flexibility on how they want to set up that formula. It also does give some flexibility on how you receive the purchase order from the vendor. But the trade-off that we're looking at is that you will run into minor COGS discrepancies because of currency rounding. We also talked about in the last session how purchase orders will lock your COGS on the COGS history and formulas on the product once the purchase order has been received and sold or adjusted. The reason that it is locked is to help protect your financial data. So those are locked. But we also talked about how recommended markups worked in purchase orders. So you'll see in this example in just a moment, I have a Trifexis product that cost $125.09. So in just a moment, you'll see that when I change this, so when I change this from 125 to $126 and some change, my markup is going to fluctuate. And that is so that my sell price does not change. The reasons for that is because it prevents the sell price from fluctuating. So you may not want chronic medications like preventions medications to increase because you have a customer that buys that on a regular basis. And also it helps protect your sell price when the COGS decreases. But with this, I have a really exciting announcement to make on this feature. We have an upcoming feature. I'll save that to the end, so hopefully you'll stick around to hear that one. All right, so in the next slide, I also wanted to give a tip, especially to our Vet Cove users, because there's a lot of flexibility built into the platform when you're linking your products to Digitail. So here, the rule of thumb is that when you link a Vet Cove product based on what you have set up in the unit in the formula. So this will ensure that your COGS price comes in correctly as well as the quantity. So in this example, I have that package of Serenia that contains 10 boxes of 4 tablets. So this is my entire package. I want to make sure that I link that the same in Vet Cove. So that's based off of the unit and the formula that I have set. That is the same here in a different example for a different formula that I have set up. Instead, I have the box of 4 tablets. So I want to make sure that when I link that to Vet Cove, that I also link it as the box. All right, so how does this look like in reporting? In the last masterclass, we talked a lot about this Serenia box. It cost $120.34 for the entire box of Serenia. Now, where it starts to run into rounding is that when we add $120.34 and we divide that by 40 tablets, it technically equals 3.0085 cents. But because of currency rounding, it gets rounded up to the 301. So this is where we start to see some of those rounding differences in your COGS, especially if you set up the unit to unit formula, not specifically the subunit to unit formula. So what that looks like in reporting, I have two examples here. So I have our first example, which is the package of Serenia. And because there's only a quantity of one, no division required. It's very simple. I'm adding in my supplier unit cost price. My cost price is correct in my purchase order. But when I start to change that into smaller units, so whether it be the box of four or whether it be the unit to unit, you'll see that because I input 3.0085, it rounded up to $3.01. So now my total COGS is $120.40. So this does leave a 6 cents discrepancy across that package. Excuse me. So what that looks like on reporting, I did add the two examples here just so you can see what that looks like. So I'm on this third row here, oh my gosh, third row here. I have the unit to unit set up, so $3.01. And you can see that obviously it pulled in that COGS price of $12.40. However, when I add the package of 40, you can see it pulls in my unit cost appropriately, and it also calculates my subunit cost appropriately because in reporting or before the reporting, the currency rounding occurred on this specific setup. Therefore, this does not become a problem in your reporting because we added the product and the report did the math for us. So I think this is just, again, proof that when you add it by the supplier unit, this is how it was designed. So this is going to pull in your data appropriately. All right. So again, if any of that was confusing, we did talk a lot about this in the previous masterclass, a lot about formula setup. So I would encourage watching that recording if you were not able to join. If you didn't receive an email on this and you did register, feel free to reach out to me and I'll send you the link. So before we get into the purchase order sections, I want to talk about managing stock alerts. Again, we have people that are here from different journeys in their Digitail site. So first, when we're talking about managing stock. In your admin settings, you can allocate a email to a individual that wants a stock alert. So just as a heads up. And what you will get is you will get an email that lists products and it tells you that that product is running low. Where this information comes from is it's going to come from the product and actually down here. So you have minimum stock and you have optimum stock on your product. Minimum stock means that that is the lowest stock that you deem acceptable, while optimum stock is the ideal amount of stock that you want to keep on the shelf. So you don't really want to get below that, but this is a secondary alert that if it gets any lower than this, then you'll see it available in your stock section. So I'm going to show that up here next. So in your stock area, you have two sections where you can look at either the stock to order, so the stock to order or the low stock. So stock to order is anything that's below your ideal amount of stock. So this is the amount of product I would like to keep on the shelf at all times, while low stock is anything that's minimum stock where you don't want it to get anywhere past that quantity. So you're going to receive an alert on the optimum stock once it gets below, but you'll also receive an alert the second time here. So from the stock to order tab, it'll show you anything that is below your optimum stock. And this occurs as soon as a product is added to a record. So here we have optimum quantity, which is your first tab that you can look at. You can add it to the shopping list and you can begin the purchase order process with your vendor. Then you have your low stock. Again, this is anything below your minimum amount. So you can do the same thing where you add that. to your shopping list. So two alerts available, but what I want to get to here is that stock alerts are determined by the unit. So again, this is impacted on how you have your formula set up. So you can see that I have two different examples here. This Serenia tablet is a subunit to subunit measurement, while this is a bottle measurement. So in this example, because I have this set up as the bottle, and the bottle is where the stock alert is coming from, you'll want to set up a percentage or a fraction of that bottle. So in this example, I am suggesting that my ideal stock I want to keep on hand is 75 tablets, while I don't want to get below 25 tablets. If you set the 1-to-1, because you can use a whole number. So in this case, I have Serenia. I don't want to get below 2 boxes of 4, and I want to always keep 12 bottles. I'm sorry, 3 boxes of Serenia in stock. All right. So we've touched a little bit on the stock alerts. I want to move on to purchase order details and explaining just a few details. Again, in terms of time, there's just a few that I wanted to focus on. So we have the reception committee, and the intended use of this was to document who received the purchase order. It is a free text section, so I also use it as like a section to add a note. The other section that's important is your supplier vendor. So what's important to note here is that tax application is determined by the tax settings on your supplier and administration. So I'm going to show you that in just a moment. So from the administration page, you're able to create multiple suppliers. You're also able to save their fiscal settings. So in most cases in Canada and in the US, we pay tax. So your suppliers you'll want to have marked as paying tax. When you receive a purchase order, your product will save tax on the line. So if you've ever noticed that your tax doesn't appear to be pulling in, it might be because this is not toggled on appropriately. I'll show you what happens when you have this toggled on as no. So before I do that, again, just to remind you, the product sales tax is configured at the product level. So when you're creating a product, you're adding the category, the sales price, you have a tax rate drop down. When you select that tax, that's the same a tax. So again, the assumption is that the tax percentage charged to the client is typically the same percentage paid to the supplier. You can change it when you receive it on a purchase order. For some reason, the tax is differentiated, and I'll show you that here in just a second. So this is the example I'm going to use. I'm going to show you what it looks like when that supplier is marked as no is paying tax. So you can see in this example, I have e-collars and I have a 10% tax rate applied to that product. So when I go to a purchase order, you'll see that let's just let this load for just a second. So what will happen is if I have a tax supplier without tax and I go to add an e-collar, the e-collar had 10% tax generated on it, but you can see that tax is ignored. Once I switch this back to a supplier with tax, it will add the tax from the product onto the purchase order. And if I need to, I can change that tax rate. So you do have flexibility to adjust the tax rate on the purchase order if for some reason it doesn't match what you paid the supplier. So in this next section, very quickly, I'm going to go through some purchase order statuses. We had a fairly new release, so I want to make sure that everybody is aware of it. Very quickly, draft just means that you started, hasn't marked as received. And then you have pending. So you have a section on your purchase order where you can mark it as pending. In this case, you could use it if you started to review the purchase order, but you weren't able to complete it. You had to step away from it. purchase order status received. So again, I want to hammer this really into you. So once a product has been received and it has already been dispensed onto a record or adjusted, it does become locked, so you can no longer edit those sections. However, you can still modify products that are received as long as they haven't been sold or adjusted, and you can adjust anything, whether it's deleting the received stock, so you can delete the item from the purchase order. You can adjust COGS, discount, tax rate. Any of these sections can be adjusted. And in this example, I just want to show you very quickly, these two products came from the same purchase order. So I can easily see that my fields here are editable. I have fields available and I can remove that item. However, this item you can tell has been sold. The only thing I can change and that will remain editable is the batch number and the expiration date. It can be changed here on the purchase order, but it can also be changed in the stock section. And this is a fairly new one too, so I wanted to make sure that we covered it, is that we also have the back order or partially received status. So how that works is, this GIF hasn't been, okay, so you can mark them all as received, and then you can untoggle products you didn't receive. This PO will recognize there's items that you have not received. It will ask you if you want to create a back order, or the second option is just to ignore it. Once you hit confirm, you'll see that you have a new purchase order with the back order status. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a new purchase order, and it's only going to include the items that you did not receive. So when that purchase order or that invoice comes in, then you can modify the products on a much smaller purchase order. All right, so next, I want to talk about some of the details inside of this is what we call the product list in the purchase order. I highlighted a few of them again in terms of time, just so we can discuss how this is going to look on reporting. So you have your supplier discount, which can be a dollar amount or a percentage. Then you have your COGS discounted. This is the individual tablet or the individual unit that is discounted. You also have the supplier tax rate. This is what you as a business is paying the supplier in tax. And then you also have total COGS, which total COGS is plus or minus the supplier, both the supplier discount and the tax rate and the quantity. So you can see in this example here, I have my Serenia 60 milligrams. I have 10 boxes of 4. So this is calculating my full 10 items with the discount. So I next want to cover, how does my supplier discount impact my sales price? Well, it doesn't. It doesn't impact your sales price because we never will automatically reduce your sale price based off of a discount or based off of a COGS decline. So you'll see in this example, even though I added a 10% tax, my cost price is $45.04 and it does not change. So I have just a really quick image here just so you can see. We have the 10% discount. This was my last price, my current price, but my price never changed even though I added the discount. It's only saving here in my discounted COGS. So what does it look like in inventory reporting? You can see here that I have that same example where I have a Serenia. So this is a Serenia that I have on purchase order 38. I didn't change the prices in terms of just for the example, but you can see that without the discount, I paid $225.02. But my purchase is 202.68. So in reporting, we're just keeping track of that discount. And just again, so you know you have a section to apply that discount so you can track that appropriately in your inventory reporting. All right, so next I want to go through how does supplier discount and tax impact the total COGS. So here the math is that first, the supplier discount is applied first. Then the tax is applied to the discount. So you can see in this example, we have the e-collar that costs $2.99. We're going to remove the discount of 15 cents. So this is our new price of $2.84. Then after we add the discount, we'll go ahead and add the tax rate. So here you have 319, which is where that cost price is coming from. So if you ever wondered about the math here, you want to first add the discount and then you would add the tax. And you can actually see it here on your purchase order. So it shows us here again that we have a $2.99 cost price of $5.98. First, we're going to get rid of the discount. So it's going to bring us to $5.68. So $5.98. Here's our discount of 30 cents. And then our tax rate is 57 cents because it's going on to this 568, which gets us the 625. So once that purchase order gets bigger and bigger, it can be difficult to see, but this is a lot easier to see in an individual example. So now I want to talk about how does discount and tax appear in reporting. I'm using a different example, and in this example, I'm going to use aloe vera, an aloe oatmeal shampoo. I'm going to add, some wacky numbers. So I've got a 12% discount and a 10% tax rate. On reporting, you can see that I have a purchase unit cost of $11.20. So where that math is coming from, I've got a cost of 3 bottles at $4.24, so $12.72. The only thing that I'm going to account in the report is the discount. So that's where we're getting the 12% off or the discount. So very important to note that tax is not included in the inventory report in any of the columns. So tax is never accounted for. I'm repeating that again. Tax is not included in the inventory report calculations. So all of those columns that you see that include COGS and sales price are excluding tax. The reason tax is not considered in the report is because it's considered as pass-through. Typically, when the supplier is charging you tax, you're also charging the customer tax, and we don't have a choice but to pay tax. So, again, I just wanted to include that because I think that kind of simplifies the report a little bit if you understand that tax is not accounted for in any of the columns. So the key takeaways from this section is that, again, tax is not included in inventory movement report. It's not considered as a product cost. Supplier discounts only affects COGS. It does not affect the sell price. And when you apply both a supplier discount and a tax, the supplier discount is applied first, and then the tax is calculated on the discounted cost. I also discussed that the formula setup does impact your reporting when it determines COGS calculations. So when you're doing the one-to-one and you start to divide that product at a higher level, you get more decimal places. Therefore, you're going to get currency rounding on the purchase order, which will impact the inventory report. Otherwise, if you were to store it as a subunit, 2-unit product, the report will appropriately add decimal places and calculate your unit correctly. The other thing we covered is that stock alerts are set by the unit. So again, if you're setting this by the bottle in a larger formula, you want to fraction that minimum and optimum setup versus if you're setting up the 1-to-1 ratio, then you can use whole numbers in that case. So um, I also briefly touched on the markup, but I also wanted to introduce this feature that's coming out in a few weeks. We are coming out with auto increase sales price based on COGS. So, like I mentioned before, we're never going to decrease your sale price because a COGS or a discount was applied. So, in this feature, this means that if your COGS increases, then your markup and your sale price will also increase. I know a few people might be interested in this, but just as a awareness, this is an all or nothing. So, if this is a feature that you plan on using in the future, and there are products that you don't want to increase on every time the cost goes up, then I would definitely recommend kind of coming up with a workflow on how to determine which products should not be increased versus auto increased. Again, if you choose to turn this on. All right. So we're about 30 minutes in. So now it's time for a QA session.
Nice. Thank you so much for walking us through that, Heather. Very informative and a lot of great content. We do have some questions in the Q&A section. We've been answering them live while we can. Alex is currently responding to Melissa at the moment, but Sandra has two back to back. Can you see them, or did you want me to read them out?
I can see them now. I just stopped sharing my screen. So
Okay,
Sandra
nice.
says, is the supplier discount a common use option? I've never used it because we don't receive a discount, if I'm understanding correctly. Yes, Sandra, I think that it's probably not very common to receive a discount from a supplier. I think this happens a lot with larger groups, so they have multiple practices, locations, so it might be more common for them to receive a discount. But yeah, talk to your vendor. If you ever receive a discount, then you have the option in your purchase order to add it, so it keeps that COGS correct. So Sandra also asked, we do have medications that are a buy one, get one free or buy 10, get 13 free. That's a good question. So you want to know how to store that information. Well, technically, I might need some more context on this one. So we have that buy one, get one free or buy 10, get 13 free. Um, is this what you're receiving from the vendor? Let's let's follow up with Sandra on this one because if this is to do with vendors and getting free products from the vendor, then it's not accumulating cost for you. So I wouldn't consider that as a cost item.
Sandra, I will follow up with you via email as well.
Yeah.
Alex is responding to Heather. Heather, if you want to take on Amy's question.
If prices are not going, if the prices are not going up, yes, that is correct. So currently, the way that Digitail is set up is that the recommended markup on the product is just a suggestion. So when the cost goes up on your product, your markup decreases because the sell price remains the same. And the idea of that was that so if your COGS price goes down, it doesn't also decrease your price. But we have a feature that's coming out in the next few weeks where you can set it that if my cost goes up, I also want my sell price to go up.
Awesome. And Heather, yeah, I know Alex is typing, but maybe just for the full audience, we can also respond to Heather's question live, just so that we have it in there.
Let's see.
So do the
Ah,
stock alerts apply to different batches?
Yes. So does the stock alerts apply to different batches? Yes. It does apply to different batches. It's the stock in your stock module section is accounting for all of your batches that you have available in your inventory. So here, I can, sh if we want to see a real life example, because we do have time.
Yeah, sure. If you've already got one lined up and it's easy, let's go for it.
Yep. So in your stock page here, so I think I have Serenia. Maybe not that one. Let's pull all of them up. Okay, so the stock alerts are coming from this section up here. You can see like when I close this out, this is showing the total number of that item that I have in stock. So when I drop this down, I can see that I have two different batches. So one that I received on purchase order 38, another one that I received on order 31 or 41. So this is accumulating all of the batches that you have available in stock.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah. Let's see.
Sandra, I think in terms of your comment, I'm happy to schedule something and we could get something in the calendar. So just let me send an email follow-up. And then if we can get something in the books, that would be the best case for that. Any other questions, folks? We've got a little bit of time still. Awesome. I think we can round it out here. I know people might be typing in, and if you do have questions about this, please set up our support team. We'll make sure that we get these in priority to get you an answer. And if you have any other questions or thoughts around this, please let me know. Thanks so much for taking the time today. In 2 weeks from now, so March 31st, we'll have our third session as well. Really looking forward to connecting again and appreciate everyone's time today.
Yes. And before you end the call, Jamie, I do ask that if you guys could do me a favor, there is a survey that comes out with the follow-up email. So if you guys could fill it out, let us know the topics that you want to cover, any feedback that you have. That's how we're going to improve this process. And I'm really interested to hear like what you guys want to talk about. So please do that. Please, 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 please for me. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great Tuesday and rest of your week.